In this video, we're going to talk about processing your auditions. The subject of processing your voice is quite a big one for voiceover artists, especially when you're starting out. There are those people that love to play around with what their DAW can do to their voices so that they can sound as cool as possible. And then there are also people who can be very puritanical about making sure that it's all about your raw sound. When you press record in whatever your recording space is, that's what you should be delivering. And I wanted to first kind of start discussing this topic a bit by clarifying what I'm wanting to talk about when I say processing your audio. So I specifically want to talk about EQ, which is when you're adjusting frequencies within your voice, and that's often really to make it sound. Sometimes you want to brighten up your sound, sometimes you want to make it fuller or deeper. So there are those very subtle adjustments, which again can lend itself to whatever that you're delivering. And then there's also the art of compression, which is when you're literally taking the loudest part of your voice in a given section and the lowest, quietest part of your voice and compressing it down so that there's less dynamic range. And what that tends to do is make it sound louder, even though it actually isn't technically louder, and therefore a bit punchier. Now, I don't want to get into more specifics about those two things because they're a real art form until themselves, but I think it's important that that's what we should be discussing. Going back to what I was saying about those people who love to process their audio and those people that want to keep the sound as neutral as possible, as clean as possible. The reason the latter want to do that is completely understandable. It's because we want to offer broadcast quality audio. And what does that mean in a digital age? Well, generally it means that if you're recording between -6 and -12 dB, generally speaking, that your noise floor, the noise around you, the background noise, is acceptably low so that people can hear what you're saying without any distractions. And I'd say a noise floor of -60 dB at least is something to strive for. That would be a broadcast quality. And also that the audio that you're delivering, that you're offering, is free of any reverb or reflections off hard surfaces. There's no echo or anything else like that. So it's literally just your voice, not too dead, so not muffled, but at the same time not too live either, so not in a bathroom essentially. Now, most importantly, you want to strive as a voiceover to be able to offer raw sound. If someone asks you for a raw sample, a raw audition read, or a raw recording session, then you need to be able to supply exactly that and make sure that your raw sound is good enough. And obviously, when you're learning, when you're starting out, you may simply not be able to offer that, and you need to adjust accordingly. You might have to apply a denoise effect, for example, or a DS effect if you are prone to sibilance. And I know that's something that I constantly have to work on still, in which case there are various different cool plugins that you can use to solve that issue, which is fine if you're either self-directing or if you're recording with clients and they're over Zoom or something. But if a client is recording at their end and they're using something like Source Connect, you aren't able to apply all of these solutions to a live recorded track in the same way. You can do a certain amount of stuff, but not that level of problem solving. It becomes a real kind of issue. So first and foremost, you need to work on addressing your raw sound as much as possible because it's very important. And if someone asks for a raw sample, an agent, whatever, in terms of an audition or a finished job, then that's what you give them. But returning to the title of this video, which is when we're talking about auditions, I do believe that, surprise, surprise, there's an element of nuance that needs to be involved. And it really depends on what platform you're using and who you're talking to. So especially with pay-to-play sites, subscription sites, where it's the end client who is assessing your voiceover audition, but this can very often be the case when you're working directly with certain clients as well, and they ask for a demo read, you are best off if you can subtly tweak your audio to make it sound as good as possible, because the end client is looking for something as close to the finished product. They won't understand the nuances that audio might have to pass through. Essentially, if the audio is going to be judged by an engineer, leave it alone, especially if they tell you to do so. But if it's an end client as well, then think of maybe offering a second sample, which is something that you lead with, which is a slightly tweaked version of your best. What I like to think of it is like when actors are normally doing an in-person audition or even via Zoom, and they dress as the character. And if you go too hardcore with dressing fully as the character, then all of the external stuff can actually distract, and you don't want to distract at all. You want to be authentically yourself and your voice, and whacking the mic and all of that kind of stuff as well. But you do want to, at the same time, be able to make that little creative leap on behalf of the end client, who maybe isn't used to selecting voices, so that they have something they can imagine hearing in their finished product. Which means, fundamentally, you need to educate yourself about how audio works. It's not simple enough to just say, no, don't touch it, you must always have raw sound, because as Toby Ricketts, a voiceover I hugely respect, has said, and he works a lot in pay-to-plays, is it's an arms race in terms of the number of people auditioning regularly. And those people who know how to tweak their EQ incredibly subtly, or their compression incredibly subtly, so that they can make their auditions sound a bit more like the finished article without changing their voice radically, without misrepresenting what they actually offer, are going to stand in good stead. Now, I'll admit that I've tried to practice what I'm preaching here, because I used to be very much of the raw audio is the way forward and that's all I'm going to offer, especially because I'd invested in a home studio. So I was kind of like, yes, I have no problems here. I have nothing to hide at all. So I've been going back into doing a little bit of pay-to-play auditioning, and my ratio over the past 6 months has been booking one job every 30 to 40 auditions, generally speaking, because I was looking to get into more commercial work, and that was all submitting raw quality audio. For the last month, I have been now subtly applying a little bit of processing to everything, as well as offering a raw example at the end as a secondary take. And my booking ratio has gone from 1 in 30 to 40, you could say 1 in 35, to 1 in the low 20s instead. So there seems to me, and it's early days yet, but there seems to me to be a significant adjustment there. And it logically makes sense. Firstly, you've got to remember who that you're serving. And I'm talking specifically about commercial and corporate projects. With video games, again, and animation as well, they generally want your completely unvarnished self, because it's very much about the believability and authenticity of your sound as well. But even having said that, I saw a wonderful voice actor who does a lot of video games and a lot of monster voices, Michael Schwalbe, on his Twitch channel, where he walked us through the process of how he auditioned for an indie project where he had to do a monster voice. And Michael can do monster voices naturally. He's one of these people that has worked into a huge skill set for himself. But even then, for an indie project where they might not know exactly how you treat the audio, he was applying an effects rack himself, specifically so he sounded much more like the finished monster, essentially, that they may be going for as well, as an option, as a take. So it's this thing that you need to be constantly sensitive about. But first and foremost, you need to educate yourself about these things. And that means you need to take courses about things, because if you do delve into the world of compression, you need to know exactly what it is that you're talking about. I've taken a course recently with a gentleman called Tim Tippett, the voiceover guru, and I thought it was an amazing course in terms of being hugely educating. But you also need to know that you need to learn about how these different things affect your voice, how it could apply to different voice genres, how you treat your voice in one kind of commercial read as opposed to a promo read, or a soft sell as opposed to a hard sell can be very, very, very different. So you need to learn your vocabulary about these things, because the end point is that will make you a better service provider. It will make you a better collaborator for the people that you hope to be working with consistently in your voiceover work. And also, another caveat is that there is a degree of subjectivity. I reached out to 3 different, very well respected voiceover audio engineers and shared with them my raw sample in this space. And one of them said, yes, it's absolutely perfect, fantastic, really, really love it, don't have any adjustments that I would make. Just kind of admitted that obviously it's a room, so it's a bit liver, so you can deaden it if you want, which I was fully aware of. One who gave me a set to make a read a little bit more punchy, especially for certain types of commercial work, which I have then taken as a preset rack, essentially, of different effects, and then I've started to adjust it myself. And then there was another guy who gave me a whole processed version, which sounded really off to me. And this is a man who charges multiple hundreds of dollars if you want him to service your voiceover. So again, there's a degree of subjectivity here. To some people it may sound great. To me, I was like, I'm good, thanks. So that's all that I wanted to kind of bear in mind. There are deeper dives that can go into processing, EQ, compression, all of that kind of stuff. What I would really recommend is not to resort to the defaults that you may have in your DAW. Continue to experiment, educate yourself about these things rather than going for anything extreme. They're all about small adjustments. But by the same token, if auditioning is going to be a major part of your business model, if you are constantly recording samples for end clients, then it's great to be able to offer options. You know, this is the processed ready to go version or more ready to go version, plus as well, and you can add it as a downloadable link rather than cluttering their email inbox with an attachment as such. Here's the raw version as well for your reference. Again, it all comes down to how can you solve other people's problems in terms of their workflows. When you don't know, then cater to both alternatives that they may have. I hope you found this video of some interest. If so, please do spread the word. Please do like, subscribe. Please comment about your experiences in terms of what you've done with your audio, whether or not you process your audio or not, and what you may have found useful as a resource as well. Thanks so much as ever for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.